Hello, welcome to this video. Today we're looking at PowerPoint and improving your accessibility within your presentations. So I've got a number of tips I'm going to work our way through. If you don't use PowerPoint, then you may find these useful with other presentation apps, maybe Google Slides or Adobe Spark. So let's dive straight in with our first tip. So before we do that, there is a accessibility checker within PowerPoint. I can never find it, so you can see I've searched for it, accessibility checker, and it will give you any warnings, use of captions and audio for video. So it's just reminding me. I've got a video there on slide 8, and I need to make sure that I've got captions provided. So it's quite a useful thing. If you haven't added alt text to images, it will tell you that as well. So use the accessibility checker to review your presentation at the start. So that's my first tip. So let's dive in and look at the rest of them. So the first one, or the second one we're looking at, is the adding of alt text. So alt text provides a description of the image. So those people who are accessing the presentation and using a reader to read through the presentation will get a description of what's contained within that image. Having inserted the image, when you insert it, it gives you a chance to add alt text, or you can, having inserted it, you can click edit alt text, and you can either get the AI built into PowerPoint to generate you a description, or you can type in your own description. If it's just there to look pretty, then you can mark it as decorative. So that's the first thing to bear in mind, is the adding of alt text. Next thing to consider is the type of font that you use, and I would recommend the use of a serif font. So by that I mean one which doesn't have all of the ticks and twisty bits. So potentially Arial or Century Gothic are my go-to fonts. They're nice and clean and easy to read, and I'd steer clear of your Times New Roman because those other elements that are attached to the letters just make it slightly harder to see. So use a sans serif font when choosing your fonts, and be wary when using design ideas that potentially it may point you in the direction of a serif font such as Times. On to the next tip, and it seems like a straightforward one, but again, design ideas, especially with title slides, likes to make use of just caps only. So I'd really suggest that you don't write in capitals, write in a combination of lowercase and uppercase. It's much easier for people to see and to read. So don't use capitals all the way through, a mixture of upper and lowercase text. Moving on to next tip, we're now looking at adding links to a presentation. So when we add a link to a presentation, much better to put what the link is taking us to as opposed to the link. Now this is quite a short link, but sometimes they can be really long. If you're linking to a Microsoft team, the link seems to go on forever. So much better to put the description in there saying what it links to as opposed to the link. I think it looks cleaner, but it also lets the viewer know what they're linking to, what they're clicking on the link to. You don't need to put link because the reader recognizes it's a link because it has the HTTPS at the start. However, you can, if you right click on it and click link and edit link, it will allow you to either put a screen tip in, or you can change it so it's the description as opposed to the link itself. So it's worth just doing that, making sure, put in a description and then add the link to that as opposed to just adding the link. Moving on to the next tip. There are a startling number, and I can't remember the statistics, of people who suffer from colour blindness. So when you're using colour, especially using colour to try and convey meaning, bear this in mind. So instead of just relying on the red text to say no and the green text to say yes, try inserting an icon. So you can see I've inserted these icons as a way of just reinforcing the message, and it's very easy to do that. We can go to insert icons, and then we could search for a cross to add, or a tick, etc. So use the insert icons, add icons to reinforce any messages where you've got colour there, because just colour on its own won't potentially be enough, especially if people are suffering with colour blindness, or it could just be the way that their device is set up, the monitor or display not be that good. Moving on to our next tip, and it sort of relates, and it's being aware of the contrast between your text and your background. So for me being dyslexic, I find that the contrast between black and white is sometimes too much for me. I much prefer to have a slightly softer contrast, so I'd suggest you try to avoid the use of black text on white backgrounds or vice versa. As you can see with my previous slide, I've used a pastel colour in the background, and then for the text I've used a grey as opposed to a black, just to help make it easier to see. And then my final tip is to do with the use of video. Video is a hugely powerful tool, but obviously there may be people accessing your presentation whose hearing may not be that good, or they just prefer other means of reassuring and gaining understanding. So I would always link to a transcript of your video in addition to just having the video on its own. Obviously, certain videos you can have subtitles enabled. If you use Microsoft Stream, there's an option to generate a subtitle, to generate a transcript. So it's a great way to do that. So there are my top tips for ensuring that your presentation is accessible. I hope you found the video useful. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe to the channel and join me again soon for more EdTech videos. Thanks for watching.